Hi guys and welcome back, and if you're new here, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be fitting on my Hyundai i30N the gearbox mount insert. So this is a Black Series one, so it's going to be the stiffest of them all. You can get obviously other colours for different stiffnesses. I haven't fitted this one myself, but I'm going to give it a go today and show you how I go about it. So if you want to see that, stay tuned. This is one of 4 bushes that Powerflex have sent out to me. We've done the upper right engine mount, which is uploaded already, and we did the rear lower engine mount almost a year ago now. So if you want to see how to do that, well, I'm going to put the link in the description for both videos. So if you want to see how I'm going to do this one on the gearbox side, stay tuned and I'll see you very shortly. Today we're going to be fitting the EBC big brake kit on my Hyundai i30N. Here I'm going to be fitting the rear spats. So as you're looking at the engine bay, you've got the upper right engine mount, which is just there, which we did last week, and then the gearbox side is just underneath there. You can see it just underneath the battery tray, just down there. So we are going to have to take the battery and the battery tray out, possibly something else. When we get there we'll find out. Let's start with disconnecting the battery. The negative does just pop out like that. That was a little bit stiffer than it normally is. And then on the positive you've got a little click at the back there. So that's both your terminals. So we're going to disconnect the negative first and then the positive. It's always better to do that when you're doing it safely. So the nuts on the battery terminal are 10mm. And then just at the front of the battery here, you've got like a clamp that holds that on, and that's a 12mm, so we're just going to do that as well. You might find it easier with a spanner. Then you've got these 2 little handles, so we're just moving the positive out of the way. And that's the battery out. So by the looks of it, we're going to have to disconnect the ECU to get the battery tray out. So they will be 10mm, 10, 10, 10, possibly these 2 12s. So I was correct, these 2 here at the front are both 12s, and all the other bolts that you can see are all 10mm. So I'm just going to crack them off with the ratchet and then just whiz them off with a gun. It'll be a lot easier. So we also have a 10mm here as well that holds the ECU in. So I undid that 10mm that was the final bit of the bracket for the ECU. With my brace in the way, I think I'm going to have to disconnect the ECU. So if you need to do that, I'm not sure if it will clear. You should be able to get clearance enough to lift it up, just so you can get it over these two little clips that are there. But I'm definitely going to have to disconnect the ECU. So it's just a little tab that you press in there, and then just lift that up, and then just pull that out. Same on the other side. So now the ECU is out of the way, we should be able to there's one more bolt at the back down there. Just it, just there. It's like another 12mm. So actually, to get the battery tray out, you have to take the ECU out and disconnect it anyway, or you might be able to still slide it over, but you need to get this bolt out. Yeah, so that's 12mm as well. So you can see down here there's two little plastic stick out bits, I can't think of the word for it, and they basically just slide out like that as you're lifting it out. So you need to kind of put it towards the side of the car. So just lift this side up and then just push those things out to lift it up. And there is the engine mount there. So the insert will go in there, I'm assuming. Let's get a jack underneath the engine so that it's safe to disconnect the engine mount, and then we'll undo that and stick the insert in. So as I'm looking underneath, I thought that we would have to take the under tray off, but looking at it now, I'm not convinced that we do. I think if we put the jack underneath the gearbox here, I reckon that will support the weight of it. We won't have to take the actual tray off, so that's going to make it a lot easier to do. I'm going to give that a go, and then if I need to do anything differently, I'll update as I'm going along. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I don't know if this is the correct way a mechanic would do it or anything like that, is you've got the 3 bolts, 1, 2, just down there at the back 3, and that holds this engine mount here, and then the actual solid mount that goes onto the top of the gearbox, you've got 1, 2, one more at the back just down there, you can just see it just there. So I'm going to just take both these sides off. Normally with the Punto that I did the gearbox mount for, you just jack the engine up, took this bit off, and this side stayed on the engine, on the gearbox. So I think the way that this is laid out is going to be a lot easier to take both parts off, put the mount in, put it back on. Otherwise you're going to have to jack the engine right up, because these bolts here, by the looks of it, go all the way through to this side. You can just see the heads there, so you're going to have to jack that engine up pretty high to be able to get that length of bolt out, if it's even possible. So I'm going to try that and see how it goes. So I'm going to put a jack under the gearbox, where I said earlier, just next to the rear lower engine mount, just to support it. We shouldn't really need to raise it, it should just be able to sit where it is, and then take both engine mounts off and fit the bush. So let's do that. Cat. So I'm going to stop this video right here, because just in passing I was just speaking to my brother-in-law Aidan, who, if you've got an i30N, you probably know who he is, with their Performance Blue. He does a lot of track days and stuff, he's now sold it. I was saying how much of a pain in the arse it's actually going to turn out to be to actually take the alloy part of the engine mount off, and he's just made my life easier and your life easier. So if you're watching this, Aidan, thank you for that little tip. If you look I don't know if you can see it, if the camera's going to focus. There you go. That's the hole from the right hand side of the engine mount, and that's a little cover, and that is where you undo these 2 bolts just down there, so you haven't got to take all this alley mount off and everything like that. So I'm just going to pop this little cover off. It looks like just little clips like that, just with a little flathead screwdriver. I'll just pop all those little clips, and then that cover will push out to the wheel arch, and then we'll be able to get an extension bar above the wheel onto the bolts and undo them. And then we've just got a little bracket here, so 1-2 bolts there, 10mm, and then that's it. So we'll just be able to remove the actual engine mount without taking all this off as well. So just quickly, I just got a little flathead screwdriver and just pushed the outside of that clip just so it released from the actual car, and then I just pushed that bit down at the same time with my other hand, and then did the next one, push that out, so then this side is free, and then we can do the top and then do the other 2 at the back, and then that will just open the glory hole, as I just said in the message. So that's what we're going to go with from now on. That is now a glory hole. Alright, so now we can see the 2 bolts through the glory hole. They are 17s, so we're just going to undo those quickly with an extension bar, and then in theory that mount should just come out through the top of the engine bay, and then we can fit the insert. I lied, it's a 14. So I have the newest advanced Halfords toolkit I got for Christmas from Natalie and her family. So I've got the 1/2-inch ratchet with the large and the short extension and 17mm socket. If you don't have both of those, you can double up with the adapter to go large to small, and then put an extension on that as well, so you'll end up getting enough length to get through the wheel arch and onto the bolts. The engine mount is off. When you're taking the bolts out of the actual engine mount, just lay them on the floor in the same shape as the engine mount. Not specifically with this car by the looks of things, but with other cars sometimes the 3 bolts will be different lengths or slightly different thread pitch or something along those lines. So as you're taking them out, just put them in a pattern on the floor so you know which one goes into which, so you can see so that one's for that one, that one's for that one, that one's for that one. And then when you're putting it all back together, it's just the bolts will go back in easily. Okay, so this is the back of the engine mount. Obviously sits like that, that's where the bolts went through that way and into the alloy. So this follows the same flat at the bottom, curved at the top, and literally just slots in like that. And then this plate sits over the top and holds it in place, and the bolts go through that plate and keep the insert where it needs to be. So this mount didn't actually come with any grease. I don't know if that was because it doesn't need it or whatever the reason, but I've had a couple of squeaky engine mounts from not doing grease, so I've got some old grease laying around from Powerflex. So just going to put a little bit on the back and a little bit just on each bit that sticks out. I think the main bit will just be this flat bit at the back, that's obviously going to sit against the metal plate, so that's probably potentially the most likely to squeak when it's moving around. If you feel the need and this doesn't come with grease for you either, you're best off buying a tube of lithium grease, which is like a white grease. It's a lot better than the copper grease. So that's all greased up like that, and then obviously I'm going to put the engine mount back in, but then the plate just sits over the top like that, bolts go through, and it's all going back together. So we're just going to get rid of some of this crap from the road, so the engine mount sits back down nicely and flush. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to all build up again anyway, but might as well while we're here. And then the engine mount can go back in with the plate off in case it falls down while I'm doing it. So that's in place. Just a little bit of grease around where the bolts go on. So that should just sit there like that, and then we can get the bolt. And then I can just see over the top while I'm winding it in. That's all threading back in nicely. Other bolt. Let's give it a little shake so it feeds through. So just to make it easier, I'm not going to tighten these bolts all the way up. I'm going to put the 3 engine mount bolts in while this is all loose. Again, it's just a lot easier to do it that way, and then you can tighten everything back down and it'll all sit in the position that it's supposed to, rather than tightening, say, these 2 bolts down and then you've got to undo them because it's locked it in place and it's harder to get the other 3 bolts in. So all 5 bolts are done up, the 3 on the engine mount and the 2 that go through into the alley. And now we put the battery tray back in. Just make sure as you're doing it that that little clip there at the back and this one here, like that, so that comes through the hole that sits on top. So I'm just putting the battery tray back in now. Don't forget that one down the back, just down there on the battery tray before you put the ECU back in, because you'll be left with a bolt and wonder where it's come from and have to take it all out again. So just make sure you do that. And then you got 12mm, 12mm, that's for the bracket that holds the battery on. That's the one with the washer that goes at the front, although I don't know why, because that doesn't actually go into anything. I think it's probably from the original airbox, and I've just put the bolt back in, and that's it. So once that's done, the ECU can go back in. As easy as that. And also this other little 10mm with a washer, it's got the little groove on it, goes at the top there into the chassis. And that's it basically, just do up all the nuts, all the bolts, and the battery can go back in. And don't forget to put the little dust cover back on. So just remember, when you're putting the battery back in and you're connecting it back up, you connect the plus first, then the minus, and don't forget to put your little bracket back in to hold the battery in place. Right guys, so that is another Powerflex engine mount ticked off the list. That is all three now, all in Black Series. So we're going to see how they're going to go at Bedford in a couple of days. This is currently Friday. I'm hoping to get this video up by Saturday. Like I said in the last video, Bedford on Monday. So I'm looking forward to testing these out. If you did enjoy this video or you found it helpful or both, please give it a like and subscribe. Make sure you check out the other videos if you haven't seen them already. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.